Hello, this is Chapter 4, Sections 4.1 to 4.3. Here are the learning objectives for these sections. Chapter 4.1 gives us some historical context to understand how we got to today's understanding of how the Earth's surface moves and interacts in this idea that we now understand as plate tectonics. However, until the 1960s, which really wasn't that long ago, most geologists believed that the oceans and the continents were fixed in their current geographic positions, meaning they didn't move. They are where they always were. But we now understand that that's not the case. And this change in the idea or beliefs about how the surface of our Earth is dynamic and interacts really represents a huge scientific revolution in the field of earth science. Alfred Wegener was a key player in putting forward the idea that things weren't always how we see today. He was a German climate scientist, and in 1915 he proposed an idea based on some very interesting observations that he gathered while traveling around the world. His hypothesis was called continental drift, and it was based on his idea that at one time all of Earth's landmass must have been together, joined together in one supercontinent called Pangaea. This supercontinent began breaking apart around 200 million years ago. The continents drifted or moved through the oceans until they got to their current positions, their present positions that we see today. Alfred Wegener was able to collect a lot of evidence for this idea of a supercontinent of Pangaea, but couldn't really explain how the continents would have moved from one location to another. He proposed that perhaps the continents broke through the ocean crust somehow. The continents would have broken through the ocean crust in order to move from Pangaea to today's positions. Smart Figure 4.2 is worth taking a look at. It gives you an idea of the reconstruction and animation of Pangaea so you can see the continents as they are today, what they would have looked like when all of the landmass was together, and then how they moved into their present positions. Alfred Wegener had four main lines of evidence that he used to support his hypothesis of continental drift. First, the fit, almost like puzzle pieces, of South America and Africa together. The margins of these continents seem to make a perfect fit. In fact, he proposed that all of the continents fit together almost like a puzzle. His second line of evidence was related to fossilized remains of ancient organisms. These fossils were found on different continents, but were of the same organism. Third, rock structures and types like mountains from one continent seem to match the rock structures and types from a different continent when Alfred Wegener put these puzzle pieces together, indicating that perhaps these features were related. And finally, climate data, ancient climate data, indicated that the climates that we expect or anticipate in areas today might be very different from how they used to look. Ultimately, Alfred Wegener's hypothesis was rejected. There was not enough evidence in order to turn his hypothesis of continental drift into a theory. And the main reason is because Wegener couldn't explain how or why the continents would move. Again, he thought maybe they broke through the ocean crust as they moved, but we would think that there would be evidence that they were breaking through the ocean crust. We just didn't see it. We didn't see damage caused to the ocean crust, and we didn't think that the ocean crust was weak enough to be able to break. It wasn't until new evidence emerged because we had new technologies related to the world wars. After World War I, World War II, it became increasingly important to map the seafloor for things like missions and operations related to submarine activity. And we were also able to measure things with more accuracy. For example, the depths of earthquakes that were occurring. And we also discovered that the sea floor, the ocean floor, was actually quite young compared to the continents. And finally, the sediments that accumulate at the ocean basins, the floor of the ocean, also lend evidence to this theory of plate tectonics. So first we have ocean mapping that kind of revealed something surprising about the ocean floor. It was assumed that the ocean floor was just flat and kind of uninteresting, but this very interesting pattern emerged as we started to map the ocean floor, where we saw these seams of ridges or high points along the ocean floor. In our different ocean basins, we could see this seam running through, this pattern running through. Secondly, along the margins of some continents or land masses, we saw very deep earthquakes occurring. These earthquakes seem to go hand in hand with deep ocean trenches, which are just very deep, deep areas. If you're familiar with the movie Finding Nemo, the goggles that the scuba diving goggles that Nemo is looking for falls down a crack, and it keeps going down, down, down into the deepest depths of the ocean. This is the kind of area that they were talking about. Or you might know that the deepest point in the ocean is the Marianas Trench. That's also a deep ocean trench. So we found that where we had these deep ocean trenches, we were also having very deep earthquakes. When we could also sample rocks from the ocean floor and estimate their age, something surprising emerged. We saw a pattern. Here, where you're seeing red rock, this is really just an indication that our youngest crust is located in the same areas where those seams were found on the ocean floor. So our youngest ocean floor was found along these ridge systems, and as we moved further away from the ridge, the rocks became older in age. And again, the rock that makes up the ocean floor is much younger than this continental rock. Ocean floor is not older than around 180 million years old. In comparison, our continents we measure in terms of billions of years old. Just as the age of the ocean floor seemed to get older as we moved away from these ocean ridges, we also see that the sediment becomes thicker. Sediment almost like dust that would accumulate on your dresser if you don't dust your dresser. If you don't dust your dresser for a little while, there'll be a thin layer of dust that accumulates, but the longer that you don't dust, the thicker the layer of dust becomes on your dresser. The same idea is at play here with the sediment thickness. There's kind of like a constant shower of these small particles from dead and decaying matter and sediments that enter in from the rivers, and those accumulations build up over time. What we found is the farther that we move away from these ridges, or what are called spreading centers, the more sediment is accumulated on the ocean floor. So again, that shows that the longer that ocean floor has been around, the thicker the sediment would be, because it would have more time to accumulate on the ocean floor. What we now understand is that the Earth's surface or near surface is broken up into rigid pieces that are in constant motion. These lithospheric plates are rigid pieces that move, and they contain both the crust of the Earth, that outermost solid crust of the Earth, and the uppermost part of the mantle. Underneath the lithosphere, we have the asthenosphere. This is a hotter, weaker, softer region in the mantle that's solid, but because rock is near its melting temperature, it's able to flow beneath the lithosphere. The lithospheric plates are also called tectonic plates. Smart figure 4.9 is worth looking at a little more closely and shows you more information related to this image and the division of the Earth between its lithospheric plates and the asthenosphere. This map indicates where the lithospheric plates are. In other words, how the crust of the Earth, with that upper part of the mantle, those lithospheric plates are broken up across the face of the Earth. This map also shows you a color coding to indicate what's happening where plates meet. For example, between the Pacific plate, the margin of the Pacific plate, and the North American plate. It's drawn in blue, indicating that that's a convergent plate boundary. Convergence means to come together. Along those ocean ridges that we discovered when we mapped the ocean floor, we see those are in red. Those are divergent plate boundaries. Divergent means to move apart. And finally, in green, in areas where the lithospheric plates are sliding against each other, but not towards or away from each other, we have transform plate boundaries. The lithospheric plates are always moving. They don't move very fast. In fact, some lithospheric plates move at the same rate that your fingernails grow. That might not seem significant over the course of a human lifetime, but over millions or billions of years, that slow rate of movement can really add up. You do need to know the 3 types of plate boundaries, and in fact, within these types of plate boundaries, there are going to be some more categories that we break these up depending on what type of plate is moving either away or towards each other. But at least for this section, make sure that you understand and can define the different types of plate boundary interactions. And that is it for 4.1 through 4.3. Thanks for listening.